New students, congratulations on your admission. On behalf of all faculty and staff at the University of Tokyo, I extend my heartfelt greetings. We are delighted to welcome you as new members of our community. On April 12th, 2027, the University of Tokyo will celebrate its 150th anniversary. We were founded in 1877 as a comprehensive university with 4 faculties: law, science, letters, and medicine. The cycle of years will soon have been repeated 150 times since then. Why do we celebrate such anniversaries? That simple question leads to many others. Why do most people celebrate their birthdays each year? Why do we repeat our 7-day week? And why do we take for granted that some countries observe a day of rest on Sunday and others on Friday? Why doesn't the new year begin at the winter solstice? In Japan, why does the academic year start in April rather than, say, January? You can probably think of many other things that you could not explain easily if someone asked you. By the way, celebrating individual birthdays is quite a recent custom in Japan. Under the traditional kazoedoshi system, everyone grew 1 year older together on New Year's Day. The day an individual was actually born did not matter much. In 1949, a new law standardized how ages are counted, and the mannenrei system, counting age from the date of birth, became the norm in everyday life. Birthdays began to be regarded as personal milestones. Such examples of customs we assume to be ancient, but in fact are recent, are surprisingly common. Today, in connection with our 150th anniversary, I would like to reflect on the concept of time. How we perceive time is an essential theme for understanding both our society and our lives. Non-human animals likely do not marvel at time's swift passage, as expressed by the proverb, "Time flies like an arrow." Nor do they experience the bittersweet sentiment that youth is fleeting and learning is hard. The difference between animals and us leads to a fascinating inquiry into the nature of time. Historians teach us that the ancient Greeks conceived of 2 gods who preside over time, Chronos and Kairos. They correspond to 2 different qualities of time. Chronos governs objective, continuous time, the clock time that we can measure. From our perspective, this universal time exists outside of us and passes uniformly. Kairos, by contrast, represents time imbued with human meaning. It is subjective, variable, psychological. As inner mental time, The duration of kairos varies. It can feel like an instant or an eternity. While chronos is the time of the clock, kairos is the time of memory and experience. Because chronos regulates people's actions, we can also think of it as social time. In contrast, kairos, with the diverse and specific meanings each of us gives it, represents personal time. When we look back on our lives and lament how quickly time has passed, we draw on reality of kairos. Chronos, as clock time, is thought to be linear. It is inorganic, external, and irreversible. It flows in one direction. Kairos, meanwhile, is time imbued with significance. It manifests in our lives through rhythms of circularity and repetition. Divisions such as the cycle of the seasons, the repetition of the week, or the daily sequence of morning, noon, and evening are cultural constructs to which we have given meaning. We share kairos not merely as personal, subjective time, but also as a recurring time that holds social significance. Viewed this way, a clock which marks endless time by repeating 24-hour cycle helps us in our lives by combining both chronos and kairos. This Yasuda Auditorium has displayed a large clock atop its tower since it was built a century ago. And we all use clocks in our daily lives. We often treat clocks as ordinary devices and pay them little attention, but they reveal a surprisingly expansive history. It is no accident that humanity's earliest timekeeping attempts were sundials, traces of which remain in many ruins, nor that the year is divided into 12 months. Long before the emergence of humankind, the movements of sun and moon brought a cyclical order to everything on earth. Through sunrises, sunsets, noon times, seasonal changes, daylight hours, and lunar phases. The sun also powered agriculture. Historians tell us that calendars were first used in Egypt to track the regular flood cycles of the river Nile. Calendars proved crucial not only for knowing when to plant and harvest, but also to organizing the needed labor. The development of astronomy, which sought to understand celestial order, was surely linked to the advancement of agriculture. Even after sundials became relics of the past, the sun's movement remained a single clock that everyone could observe. Besides following the sun, people also devised gravity-based timekeepers, water clocks, hourglasses, and weight-driven mechanisms. Later, inventors created precise timepieces that did not rely on gravity. The power source was instead the energy stored in metal springs. A major turning point was the birth of mechanical clocks with complex combinations of gears. They were the first industrial machines. The invention of the escapement mechanism in medieval Europe was a remarkable technological advance. Using two prongs linked to a pendulum, the escapement made it possible to regulate the gear's rotation by stopping and releasing them repeatedly. The familiar tick-tock that symbolizes time comes from this mechanism. In other words, rather than following the movement of the sun, the escapement marked time independently from nature through the repetition of short intervals. It was no longer continuous analog time, but rather the beginning of discontinuous, discrete digital time. Rather than the approximate order of agricultural time, people now sought to measure time more accurately for commerce and industry in urban society. Humanity's next achievement was the standardization of time. Your parents' generation might remember clocks displayed prominently on the facades of railway stations, just like the large clocks on city halls and school buildings. Time, based on the sun's passage across the sky, varies by region, depending on longitude. But the large-scale railway transportation systems made possible by the invention of the steam engine could not operate safely without a standard time for all places. A shared temporal framework was essential for the parts of the systems to work together. This convention of railway time eventually led to the adoption of standard time at the global level. When I was younger, I lived and did research in Neuchâtel, Switzerland. The area was a center for the manufacture of precision mechanical timepieces, and it exported pocket watches and wristwatches throughout the world. Founded in 1858, the Neuchâtel Observatory was one of the most important observatories in the world for evaluating the precision of watches and clocks, and also for transmitting the current time to the public, because a second was at that time still determined by Earth rotation. As people's lives became more regulated by timepieces, the need for publicly announced and shared time led to the development of more precise, accurate ways to measure time. The timekeeping role of such observatories continued until the emergence of quartz crystals as a new reference for the second in the mid-20th century. The Neuchâtel Observatory then became active in the development of atomic clocks. A leading candidate for a future definition of a second is the optical lattice clock, invented by Professor Hidetoshi Katori of our Graduate School of Engineering. It uses strontium atoms and lasers at a specific wavelength to enable remarkably accurate time measurement with a deviation of only 1 second in tens of billions of years. Accurate time is so important now because it forms the foundation for many measurements in modern society, from the height of mountains and the depth of oceans to gravitational waves and the determination of positions through global navigation satellite systems. If we trace the history of time as measured by clocks, it might appear that human time has gradually separated from its close relationship with nature. However, the history of the clock also teaches us that a different meaning has been given to time ever since the Middle Age. This appears in the allegorical hourglass depicted in paintings and the wide range of meanings that symbol carries. You may have seen depictions of a skeletal Grim Reaper holding a large scythe in one hand and an hourglass in the other. Hourglasses also frequently appear in 17th century still life paintings on the theme of vanitas, the emptiness of vanity, depicting the impermanence of wealth and power. By representing the finite nature of a lifetime, the timepiece signified death, the end that comes to everyone. While the hourglass symbolizes the limited time granted to our lives, it does not mean that the act of living has no meaning. The maxim, memento mori, remember that you must die, is deeply connected to the teaching, carpe diem, or seize the day. Even in modern times, Kairos time continues to matter. Perhaps we should recognize that life itself is a kind of clock, one that possesses its own inherent meaning. Professor Tatsuo Motokawa, who studied animal physiology in our Faculty of Science and taught at the Tokyo Institute of Technology, wrote a fascinating book titled Elephant Time, Mouse Time. He argues that while elephants appear to have long lifespans and mice short ones, time actually flows differently through their bodies. Based on cardiac mechanisms, he describes how the body size of organisms correlates with their heartbeat and breathing rate, with time flowing quickly in small animals and slowly in large ones. The time you will spend studying at this university will be an instant compared to the universe's 13.8 billion years history. Your years at UTokyo come with no guarantees. They could prove long or short, empty and difficult, or irreplaceably meaningful. Ultimately, you will shape their meaning and forge their value through your conversations, cooperation, and friendly competition with those around you today, and through your engagement with the larger society and world beyond these walls. The hourglass has symbolized restraint and moderation but it also represents renewal. Flip it over, and you can start anew. You might want to keep that ancient wisdom in mind as you begin your journey today. May your time ahead at the University of Tokyo open doors to a future full of possibilities. Once again, congratulations on your admission.